this is AJ, and today in our Polity series we are going to discuss today special status of Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, so first point is Article 370 in the part 20 to 21 talks about the special status of the Jammu and Kashmir. Under the same part, other states also enjoy special status. This same part, and there are some just that we will discuss in further lecture. But today's topic is special status of Jammu and Kashmir, considering Prince's perspective. Okay, so first point is what is the history behind the Jammu Kashmir. Okay, so that you read by yourself. Okay, that is not in our interest of civil service preliminary examination. We don't need to remember what is the exact history considering prelims. Okay, but for means you need to know the history. So just one point is that instrument of accession was signed on 26th October 1947. Okay, so under this instrument of accession, the Maharaja Hari Singh surrendered, included Jammu and Kashmir in the India. Okay, so like under this instrument of accession, state surrender three subject. Which are these three subject? Defense, then external affairs, and then communications. Okay, so these subjects are given to the India, but other subjects are remained in the state legislature of the Jammu Kashmir. The next point is article internal constituent assembly, right? This instrument taxation talks about the internal constituent assembly. See, what happens is that Jammu Kashmir is the only state in India which has its own separate constitution. Okay, like other states don't have their separate constitution, but Jammu and Kashmir have its own separate constitution. Okay, so that's why it is something it's a special case of India. Okay, Jammu Kashmir is a special case of India. Then instrument this Article 370 talks about one point is the one word is there in Article 370, that is temporary provision. Whatever comes under the Article 370 is in temporary provision. Okay, it is not a permanent status. Okay, so just remember that Article 370 has word temporary provision, talks about the temporary provision, not permanent provisions. Okay, next point is importance of state constitution. Okay, so this we will discuss in further slides. See what happens. Consider these points are very important considering prelims. Okay, you can expect a question on prelims. Okay, in this regarding these points. First point is part 1 and schedule 1 is applicable to the Jammu and Kashmir state. What happens in part 1 talks about the definition of state, and what comes under the Union of India. So these things comes under the part 1 and schedule 1. These things are applicable to the Jammu and Kashmir, but part 6th of India dealing with the state is not applicable. See, part 6th of the Indian Constitution talks about the various powers of state and what is state. Okay, the definition of state is given in this part 6th of India. This definition of state is not applicable to the Jammu Kashmir, but whatever the definition given is in the part 1 or schedule 1, whatever the things that are mentioned in the schedule 1, these are applicable to the Jammu and Kashmir. Next is definition of again I told you earlier, definition of state under part 6 does not include Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, so just remember that. Next is residuary powers belong to the state constitution except in a few matters. Whatever this is these point that we discussed earlier, like part 6 point, part 1 and part schedule 1 point, these comes as an option. Okay, and they will ask question like which is what is applicable to the Jammu Kashmir and what is not applicable to Jammu Kashmir. Okay, so just remember these things, that part 1 schedule 1 applicable, part 2 VI is not applicable. Then whatever the definition of the state is in part vi is not applicable to the Jammu and Kashmir. Then residuary powers belongs to the state state constitution, except in few matters, okay, that we discussed earlier, that defense, external affairs, and communication, these matter doesn't come under the state constitution of the Jammu and Kashmir, okay. Then powers to make preventive detention belongs to state. This is a important power. See what happens in that, you must have you must know that there is a lot of instability in the Jammu Kashmir. So to counter this instability, government always want to use preventive detention, okay? But central government can't use it, okay. The laws of the central government of preventive detentions are not applicable in the Jammu and Kashmir, okay. So these laws come under the state constitution, okay. So whatever the law made by the state constitution is only applicable in the Jammu and Kashmir, not the central government's law, okay. Next point is what about part 3, okay. So part 3 talks about the fundamental right, okay. So this remember that right to property, or right to equal opportunity in all the matters of public services, these points are not applicable in the Jammu and Kashmir. There is a certain reservation in the Jammu Kashmir regarding public services and regarding ownership of land, okay. So that's why part 3 of the Indian Constitution, which talks about the fundamental right, is not applicable in the Jammu and Kashmir. Then again part V and part IVA. See part IV talks about the fundamental fundamental DPSP, okay, directive principle of state policies. Part 4th talks about that, and part 4th A talks about the fundamental duties. These two points are also not applicable to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So remember that this is one question in this one slide. We have covered one question, okay. So remember part 3, part 4 and part 4A is not applicable in the Jammu and Kashmir, okay. Just remember, even if you don't understand properly, but just remember that. Next is what about national emergency, okay. So what happens in the national emergency? Remember that if we cannot impose national emergency, a president cannot impose a national emergency in the state of Jammu and Kashmir unless and until in the concurrence of the with the concurrence of the Jammu and Kashmir state legislature, okay. So next is that no power to declare financial emergency. Again, president don't has a power to declare financial emergency. Next point is president cannot declare state emergency on the grounds of failure to comply with the directions given by him. See what happens regarding state emergency. In other states like Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, if the president thinks that the respected state is not concerning or complying with the orders given by the president, then he can introduce a state emergency in that particular state. But with respect to Jammu and Kashmir, if he can't do that, okay, so what then, how to impose a state emergency in Jammu Kashmir, how to impose a president's rule in a Jammu Kashmir? Remember, president's rule can be imposed in a Jammu Kashmir, okay, but only if it satisfies the conditions given in the state constitution of the Jammu and Kashmir, okay. So not as per the India's constitution, okay. We can impose president's rule in a Jammu and Kashmir with with compliance with the state constitution, okay. Just remember that. One more thing I will repeat, that you can impose president's rule in a Jammu Kashmir, but without consent of the state legislature or the state constitution, you cannot do that, okay. Next is again, the state constitution of Jammu and Kashmir talks about the two emergencies. One is the president's rule, second is the governor's rule, okay. So they have some certain provisions. If these provisions are satisfied in the state, then state can request for presidential rule or governor rule, okay. Then again, disposition of any part only after state consent. If you want to dispose one particular part as per the international treaty, you have to take the consent of the state. Then amendment made to the constitution does not apply unless and extended by the president's rules. If you introduce a particular amendment in the constitution, then these amendments are applicable to all states of India except Jammu and Kashmir. If you want to apply this particular provision in Jammu Kashmir, we have to take the consent of the state legislature. Okay. Next is official language is applicable only in the interstate, center state and language of SC. There is a predominantly English is used as the official language in the interstate communication, center state communication, as well as the proceedings of the SC Supreme Court. Okay, so these language are applicable to the this provision is applicable to the Jammu Kashmir also. Okay, so regarding official language, we have a particular that means it is applicable in Jammu Kashmir, but every state in India has power or autonomy in the matter to decide which language is to be considered as the official language of that particular state. Okay, so that same provision is also applicable to the Jammu and Kashmir. Next is the 5th schedule and 6th schedule, which talks about the scheduled tribes and scheduled caste. Okay, so these types the public what I will say that converting any area scheduled tribe area, or tagging it as a restricted area, these types of provisions which come under the 5th schedule and 6th schedule are not applicable in Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, just remember these: 5th schedule and 6th schedule is not applicable. Earlier we discussed the part 3, part 4 and part 4a is also not applicable. Okay, then special leave of SC, CAG powers, election commission's power are applicable. Okay, these autonomous bodies CAG and ECs has same power. They enjoy the same power as they enjoy this power in other states. Okay, they also enjoy the same power in the Jammu and Kashmir also. Again, special leave of SC means what we discussed earlier, that if SC thinks that something is important as per SC, then it can take that case under its jurisdiction. Okay, so this is nothing but the special leave of SC. Next point is writ power of Jammu and Kashmir High Court limited to violation of fundamental rights and not in the other matters. As we discussed earlier in High Court as well as in Supreme Court topic, that writ powers of the Supreme Courts are limited to the fundamental rights only, but writs power of other High Courts are limited to the they are not limited, they are broader as compared with the Supreme Court. How they are broader? That they can use these writs power for a fundamental right as well as for other cases. But in case of Jammu Kashmir High Court, again remember that in case of Jammu Kashmir High Court, the writ powers are limited. They are as same as writ power of the Supreme Court of India. Okay, so then next point is, if someone come back from Pakistan, then what about his or her citizenship? Again, we have given one provision in Citizenship Act that we will not accept a former Pakistani as a citizen of India. Okay, so that we will discuss in the next chapter. But remember that this is not applicable to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. If that particular person was used to live in Jammu Kashmir before the accession, and after some years he decides that he want to join India, okay, or to become an Indian citizen, then he can do that. Okay, there is an exception given in the Citizen Act. The next point is, the Constitution of Jammu Kashmir came into existence on 26 January 1957 and was adopted in 17 November 1956. As we discussed earlier, instrument accession was signed in October in 1947, but instrument of this constitution of the Jammu Kashmir came into existence in 26 January 1957. Okay, so next point is, state assembly consists of 111 members in Jammu Kashmir. Okay, but out of those 101 members, 11 members, 24 seats are vacant. Why? Because these seats belongs to the area which is currently occupied by the Pakistan, that is called as a POK. POK means what? Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Okay, so under this area, these 24 seats are located. That's why currently these 24 seats are vacated in the Constitution Assembly of the State Assembly of the Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, so next point is, Urdu is the official languages of Jammu Kashmir. As I told you earlier, state has a power to consider any language as an official language, but in interstate as well as state and center or proceedings of the SCs are always held in a English language. Okay. Next, no bill can be introduced if it seeks to change a relationship with state of India. Okay. So this is one more very more important provision in the part in the constitution of the Jammu and Kashmir, that if the constitution introduces any new bill that seeks or change the relationship of the state of Jammu Kashmir and the India partially or fully, then we cannot that this type of bill cannot be introduced in the state assembly of the Jammu and Kashmir. Next point is group of interlocutors under Dilip Pedgaonkar was established to consider what are the problems these peoples are facing in Jammu Kashmir, and how to better the relationship between the center as well as Jammu Kashmir of India, Jammu Kashmir, okay, the state Jammu Kashmir. So for that, Dilip Pedgaonkar committee was established, interlocutor, okay, group of interlocutor was headed under the leadership of the Dilip Pedgaonkar. So just remember this point. What are the recommendations of Dilip Pedgaonkar? That you might ask this question, but remember that these recommendations are not important as far as prelims is concerned. Okay. So as far as prelims is concerned, whatever we need to discuss, we have already discussed. So thanks guys for watching this video, and we will meet in a next video. Peace.